Hello, everybody. Welcome to my weekly meltdowns coverage of Survivor 44. We're here at the Murgatory, or whatever the hell Twitter is calling this, like half merge, half not merge nonsense, but like still kind of cool at the same time. Thank God there's no hourglass twist. We have a lot to get into with all of the Survivor people coming together and everything. So Allison is not here tonight because there's like storms in Tennessee or something. And Beth is seeing a Broadway show tonight. She's seeing her husband Josh Groban in Sweeney Todd. So I figured we could have a sequel to the Nerd Out that we had a few weeks ago. So I figured I would have Nate come on with me. So Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Just to add to the nerd out, I saw Dungeons and Dragons the movie last night. So,
How was it? How was it?
It was good. It was good. They didn't let any jokes sit, which is what I liked about it the most. They were like, you know what, we're not going to do what Marvel does and just let every joke hang for 5 minutes. We're just going to keep going, and I appreciate it. It was good.
Listen, I'm like not even like a Marvel person, but I know exactly what you mean. Like I saw the third Spider-Man movie, the multiverse one or
No Way
whatever the
Home.
hell. Yeah, and I haven't seen any other like Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, and I feel like my life is okay without it. But I was like, my cousins in the theater, they were like, "Oh my god, this is like the best one out of all three."
It was.
And I'm like, if that's like the best, like I would love to see what's the worst, because like you're right, like the jokes just like hang for so long and they're so like generic, but like people think that they're like super witty and it makes them feel like smarter than they actually are.
For Marvel, No Way Home is pretty high up there. I'm not saying Marvel is like masterpiece cinema, but it is still like that is definitely one of the better Marvel movies.
Who was your favorite Spider-Man out of the three?
Admittedly, I did not see a lot of the Spider-Man movies growing up, so I'm really only familiar with Tom Holland.
Gotcha.
I was more familiar with the animated series.
Gotcha.
So I like WB's version of Spider-Man.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I really liked the Andrew Garfield movies. Like I know people said he was too old, but like I love Andrew Garfield, and Emma Stone is like one of my favorite people ever. So that's my vote. But we're here to talk all things Survivor. Even though I feel like we have Tom Holland in the season with Carson. So that's my like terrible segue to talking about
I think
everything that. Yeah. So Nate, give me your thoughts on like your first initial thoughts on this like half merge situation.
I think they should just give them the buffs from the get-go. Like just like you're merged. Like, come on, stop pretending they're not. Like, oh, you have to earn it. They earned it. Like, please. They're at 12. They're at the merge. Just give them the damn buffs. Like, it's just a bunch of semantics, but whatever. I'm fine with them like making half the tribe immune. I actually think that's very interesting. It actually just makes decision making a lot harder. You have to play by inches, not by miles. It makes it harder for people to hide. So like, I mean, I thought it was a great example from like Matt, where he's like, yes, I'm very, very inclined for there to be a super majority in terms of voting because I can't vote. Therefore, I can hide the fact that I can't vote. So that I thought that was very interesting in terms of that regard. And then you have Carson, who's trying to get all of the power all at once. And Carson just played very greedy in this episode where he really didn't have to. He's immune. Why do you have to play that greedy? There was no reason for him to.
That's the thing. Like I was wondering to myself, like right before I got online here, I was like, I wonder if Carson did all this because he's safe. So like he's not thinking as paranoid, therefore like playing a little more like loosey goosey. And I understand like the thought process there. Like we saw last week Carson like really bonding with Kane over like their nerd out and stuff like that. And I feel like Carson was trying to like really secure Kane as an ally by like giving him that information, giving him that heads up. But man, like that paranoia, like if you don't know that about that person before you like drop that information, like it can just like blow up so spectacularly. And you know, if Kane is the default like backup plan, That's a good indication that like he doesn't have a lot of pool or like social capital to begin with.
Yeah.
And we saw Kane like spend all of that capital trying to like change the plan to Jam Jam.
Mhm.
Of course, the plan like didn't go through, which is terrible. Like a terrible sign for Kane's future in this game in terms of how much influence he has.
Yes.
Because switching to Jam Jam should have been an easy vote because like the Purple Tribe is such like a minority out of like the 12 that are there. So if he can't even get that accomplished, he spent so much time and effort like trying to make it happen. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next one to go, to be honest.
I'm willing to bet Kane actually makes the end. I think he's
Okay.
I don't think anyone. I think people. I mean, when Kane freaked out, like everyone. I mean, you saw Heidi and Lauren. They're like, yeah, that's just Kane. Like,
Yeah.
They weren't really concerned if he knew. They were just concerned with like what would happen if Josh found out that he knew.
Yeah.
Like they were a lot more concerned, and like Brandon was like, "Yeah, you can't tell Kane that because he will freak the hell out." So they were more concerned about like how like the general reaction, not necessarily if Kane knew or not. But
Yeah.
that's yep.
So you're pretty like thumbs down on Carson like doing this move as well.
Everything that Carson does just irks me because everything that he does is something that I would actively avoid doing.
Okay.
I it's like he's like I'm just like trying to like decide between chaos and order, and we're like, dude, I like you are actively choosing chaos and to be not the smart kind of chaos. Like I think there's a great dichotomy here between Carolyn and Carson, whereas Carolyn is obviously like at face value chaotic. She is incredibly orderly. She thrives in other people having chaos, whereas Carson is actively trying to create chaos, regardless of what the result is. Whereas Carolyn's like, no, I want this to benefit me. And I posted this on Twitter. Like, Carolyn is not enraptured by the dream of being on Survivor. Like, there are moments I'm sure she's had where she's like, oh, wow, I'm on Survivor, I'm playing Survivor. But her dream is to win Survivor, not to be on Survivor. And that's what a lot of players are, I think, very not seeing. So
yeah, I feel like these like like the archetype of like the young like 20 something like male super fan nerdy kid, they are so excited to be there that they like self-produce themselves in a Dr. Will type of like evil genius type of way,
yeah,
when like you really have to earn those stripes first before you can get away with that. Like you can't just like this is only Nate, this is only day 13 of this season. Like
they're halfway
clearly,
through.
you cannot earn those stripes in 13 days. That is not even 2 rounds of Big Brother for like Dr. Will time.
You can't even earn those stripes like halfway through like a 39-day season of Survivor. It's very rare when you can attribute like, oh yeah, this person was like controlled chaos in their tribe, and I can count on one hand how many players you can really attribute to them, and all those people went to at least 7 tribals in the pre-merge. So It's like you can't just say like Carson, you've been to what, 1 tribal, my guy? Like, come on, like he does not have the experience or the repertoire to like build. And I think Brandon got very annoyed. Brandon's a very straightforward player. You do what you say you're going to do with Brandon, and that is that. And to me, I would love to have Brandon on my side. And Carson, you are very, because here's the thing, Brandon's predictable. So Carson, you are towing a line that is not smart to tow, because the moment that Brandon thinks that you are not working in his best interest, basically not being honest with him or being not chaotic, that benefits him, he's not going to trust you, and like as he's done with Kane. So
yeah, but I feel like Brandon could do a lot better job like playing ball in those situations, right? And not like just being so straightforward about it all. Like I feel like it's gonna come back to bite him sooner rather than later that he is one of the few people that voted out Jam Jam tonight. And he kind of shut down.
Jam, I missed it.
It was Josh, Kane, and Brandon.
Okay,
those 3.
And then who voted for Kane?
Let me see.
Jam Jam throwing his vote or no?
Going Let me see. Mm, Who voted for Kane? Carolyn.
Carolyn. Oh yeah, okay. Like I'm
Yeah.
assuming she didn't like. I think that's a smart vote by Carolyn, honestly, because she doesn't know like someone might play the idol on Josh and he might still be around, so she doesn't want to piss Josh off. And of course, she's never voting for Jam Jam. So, and in the
Right.
weird case that they're both safe, because that's also perfectly like normal, she could vote out the person.
Right. And like it also keeps Kane like kind of in this like paranoid like tailspin too. Like he's gonna go back to tribal and be like, all right, I was the backup plan, but like I still got to vote somehow when like there was still like Josh and Jam Jam. Like it's not even that I was like the second option. I was like supposed to be the third option, and I still got votes. So
and I also think that was smart, because if in the end case that Josh plays the shot in the dark and is correct, then the next person that she knows at that point, I think, is going to be Jam Jam. She could play her idol for him. So I think that was smart.
I want to say hi real quick to Thomas and Matt and EJ in the chat. I'm reading your comments, but when it's just two people, it's hard to like pull those. Like it basically like when Allison is like going on a rant about like her digestive system, like that's when I start reading the comments. So sorry, spinning multiple plates tonight, but so I guess like I don't know, like I feel like Brandon is just like not doing a good job socially, and of course, like we saw
managing his social capital, I would say. Not, I think he's well liked. I just don't think he's managing his capital correctly.
I just like I feel like he, like when Carson goes to Brandon and is like, listen, like I told Kane about this, like he came clean. Brandon is just so like almost like a father like talking down to his son type of way.
To be fair, I think Carson deserved it.
Right, of course, but that's what I'm saying. Like you can't like yes, like you can say like that was a bad move, that was a bad idea, but I feel like there was no like let's work together to figure this out, right? It was very much so like I can't trust you anymore. Like that's kind of like the vibe that I got from Brandon going away from this conversation. And then of course like last week we saw that whole like that scene with Carolyn being left out of like that mansplaining conversation between Danny and Brandon, right?
Yeah.
It's Brandon? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like Brandon is just like shooting himself in the foot with like allies left and right. And he doesn't even realize it, Nate.
A true Renaissance man.
Yes. True. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, what else can we talk about? We got a Franny and Matt check in.
One of them's gonna get sniped so soon.
But like I'm rooting for them. So I feel like I'm like Franny and Matt's like number one fan. Like
I like them. They're a likable duo.
So cute.
Yeah.
But who do you think is gonna get sniped first?
I hope it's Matt, because I like Franny as a character more. Matt sometimes comes across a little cringe, and I think he would I honestly just do not want to see the absolute falling apart of Matt if Franny goes home first. I think Franny would hold herself better going forward, whereas I think Matt would actually just cave in on himself. But
I guess, like, how do they prevent this from happening? Like, should they have used like this merge situation to kind of like I feel like they could have fit in like very well in an alliance with Carolyn, Carson, and Jam Jam.
They need to link up with other duos. And unfortunately, with all the chaos that's going on, it's sometimes hard to identify those duos, especially because they're the most obvious. So the other duos like Jam Jam and Carolyn, absolutely, it is in their best interest to work with Matt and Franny, because it's a duo that is bigger than theirs. I think that Heidi and Lauren, if they're starting to link up now, they should also consider it, but based off the preview, I doubt it. Brandon and Danny, they should consider it, because that's a bigger threat than two big muscly dudes. Like I'm sorry, but like that actually folds right into their game plan. It does work, but I doubt anyone is going to do it, because showmances ever since season 8, showmances don't really last much longer than the final 8. So
I don't know. Look at Survivor All Stars. It's happened before,
it's
right?
happened before, but like ever since then, I mean, the longest, I think the one that got the farthest was probably Candace and Adam in season 13.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
the one that was like, that I think that's the one that got the farthest.
yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know. I like now that you mentioned like Heidi and Lauren, like I feel like even though they're not like pretty active players in the game, like well, first of all, like I feel like we check in with Heidi
Mhm.
so much, just like random thoughts about like her like intuition of like where she thinks that the tribe is going, right?
Mhm.
Like she and like tonight we heard her say like of course, like Josh is like a good solid number for us, but like honestly, I wouldn't be upset if he goes because he's getting in fights with a lot of people. He's a
Mhm.
huge liability. Like I feel like Heidi has this like great like radius of like awareness around it.
Mhm.
I
That's
just
why she's
worry.
my winner pick. Or
Yeah,
she
yeah,
was
yeah.
my early winner
And I
pick.
see why. I
Yeah.
just like I wonder if like her and Lauren are going to spend too much time like passively thinking about their positioning in the game rather than like realizing that like with all these little pockets of 2 and 3 uh,
Yeah.
they hold a lot more sway than they think they do if they make a decision and go one way or another, right?
Yeah, they do. However, I don't think it's in Heidi's best interest to actually make any moves right now. I think it's more so in her interest to try to make connections and try to build the correct ones. It's really just gonna.
I
I
do.
think for those two specifically, it's gonna just come down to who they decide to stick with.
Who do you
Uh,
think they
Lo-
should?
I think they should stick with Matt and Franny. Honestly, I think that's more in their interest. They're a clear bigger threat, strategically and socially. And yeah, I think long term it would not benefit them to go with Carolyn and Jam Jam because Carolyn and Jam Jam are very in tune with how everyone is like strategically placed within the tribe. But I think short term it would not be against their best interests in my opinion.
Mm. I could almost see like so Heidi and Lauren team up with Matt and Franny, like you say, and they team up as well, just for like a voting block
Yeah,
situation with Carson, Carolyn, and Jam Jam.
yeah,
And I could see like the next boots being like Kane next, and then Brandon
easily.
after that as like
Mhm.
merge threat, physical threat, whatever. Like especially if like Brandon wins like the first like merge like immunity
Mhm.
challenge, which is very possible. And then maybe like Jamie after that, because I feel like she's kind of on an island by herself too.
I she's on an island by herself. She thinks she is an idol, so she's going to be playing with house money.
Yeah,
She is hard overplaying her position, and it's unfortunate that she doesn't know it, but it sucks for her. Unfortunately, she is going to overplay 100%, and she's going to pay for it. And again, it's not entirely her fault. She got 100% duped by someone that is no longer in the game,
right.
and so and not because they got voted out, but because they got removed by extra like not normal means. So
Yeah.
yeah. So unfortunately for Jamie, she got screwed. That's sometimes just how it works out. Um, However, I think that this is probably much worse for her than Matthew still being in the game because Matthew I think was like I'm setting you up to be my shield, like
Yeah.
whereas now it's more like she's not anybody's shield, but I don't think she's. I wish I could have Jamie's confidence. Like,
I'm telling you, every confessional, she's like the one that we got tonight. She was like, "So we're hitting the merge situation, and I'm the one that has met the most people, so I have the most connections here." And like, it's all such like positive content, but like, I feel like I feel like the glue is like not there for some
yeah,
reason,
people
like.
because people this season are valuing quantity over quality, and that is unfortunate. There's very few players that are valuing quantity or quality, and those players are currently benefiting from it. Carolyn is a great example. Let me see. Heidi, I think, is a great example of someone like that. Lauren, less so, but I think she's up there, and I think Franny and Matt as well
Yeah,
are prioritizing quantity or
that's an
quality.
that's
So
an interesting like overarching like theme ending wise for the season and
Yeah.
like rewarding because I'm telling you right now, like this season is just the Jam Jam and Carolyn show, and we are along for the ride, and like I'm very happy about that. Like it's because I love them as characters.
Yeah.
But it's like very clear to me that like they're like end game characters in one way or
for
another.
sure.
Whether it's like fourth place Kelly Wentworth, Rob Goddess, or if one of them is like the winner. But and that like that theme that you're bringing up, Nate, is like would absolutely match that. Like especially if like Matt and Franny like do make it pretty far, like given like the showman's target of it all as well.
And on top of that, I would like to mention that like Josh is like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And where he was valuing in the merge quantity in terms of like how many connections he had, and not really understanding that the quality of his connections was not good. And that's where he fell, and he thought they were good. That's the thing. And he thought his lies were good, and unfortunately they were not. They were easily audible, which, speaking of which, Carolyn, people need to just listen to her for 5 seconds and take her seriously. Because, like, if they listen to her for 5 seconds, they will have a much better understanding of the game. And like, this is only helping Carolyn when they don't listen. And it is literally like, she will, if she gets the end, she can sit there and she's like, I told you exactly what was happening, and at no point did you believe me. I said it every single time. You need to listen to me because I have the correct information, but because for whatever reason you did not feel like you could trust me or didn't feel like my information was good, you're sitting there because of it. You're sitting there because of your own mistakes. Like, I could have helped you, and you chose actively to ignore me.
Yeah, and it's like it's so wild to me how blatantly, obviously, people just like dismiss her or like dismiss her agency in this game because of her.
The
like
play from her is going to be so delicious.
Yeah, and like and I guarantee you, like my wish for her is like I wish she would like lean into that rather than like actively trying to like fight that and say like, no, I am an important person here. That way, like that idol play is just like so much more delicious than it's already going to be.
Oh, I think there's going to be a point where Carolyn just gives up and she's like, you know what? Fine, play the game, play it without me, play it without listening to me, and see where it gets you. And it's good. She is the hero of this season, and I'm so happy they casted her. She's such a good player, man. It's so good.
I will say, like, heading into this merge, like, I think this is like easily my favorite out of the 4 like modern seasons that we've had so far. Anyway,
so far, it's very close to 41 to me. I think the only thing obviously detracting from 41 was the hourglass twist. However, 41 outside of that was great. They need. It's definitely giving similar vibes though. I'm just hoping that Carolyn is like, Carson is giving me Xander vibes so much. It's not even funny, where he thinks that he's this big threat and he's just not.
Yeah.
So it's
I don't know. So I guess like some other people we haven't really like mentioned too much. Like how do you see like Danny's positioning right now?
I think Danny's fine. Brandon's obviously a shield for him. Danny not really being super involved in the merge is not a good point for him. I think that shows that he's not going to get very far. I think Danny's prime double tribal, split tribal elimination boot. Honestly, I think he's going to misplay his idol, and he's going to get blindsided with it in his pocket. So it's just, I don't think that idol's going to get put to good use because we don't really hear him talk about it.
That's true. That's true. I totally forgot. Like I have the so like for these shows, I always have like the Survivor wiki up. And I was just reading, like, they have a little tab for like advantages on hand, which God bless whoever made that design decision. Thank you. But I totally forgot that Danny had a hidden me idol until you even mentioned it here. So
so it's either not going to matter much, it's not a big story moment. So it's just like like we know, I think we can kind of figure out that Jamie is going to attempt to play her idol, her fake idol at some point it is, and she's going to go home because of it. I think we know Carolyn has brought up the idol a couple times. She's going to play it correctly. I don't see I don't think that there's a world where Carolyn does not play it, or either that or she doesn't play it and she shows it off at Final Tribal. It's one of those. Danny, I think, goes home with it in his pocket or he misplays it. I don't think there's much of an in between for him.
Yeah, I mean, so the only just to like kind of reset here. So the only advantages that are in the game currently that are real are Carolyn's idol, Danny's idol, and Lauren still has her extra vote.
Yeah, and I think because they brought it up at the merge, I think it's going to matter. I think it's going to matter. They always put in for the merge, at least for the new era, they always put in the details that are going to matter for the post-merge part of the game. So I think that the vote is going to matter. I just don't think Lauren is going to specifically matter for who wins the game. Lauren is not a part of the winner story.
Gotcha. So if you had to say the final three right now,
I think I think Carolyn's going to get there. I think Kane either goes home next or he makes final three. I don't think that there's much of an in between for him. Matt is a big part of the edit for no reason whatsoever. Another thing, he either makes the end or he goes home next. So I think I don't think I have a good guess for who could make final three. The only person I'm willing to bet on is Carolyn. I think Jam Jam's gonna get sniped before the final three or possible final two, because if another person gets medevaced or gets taken out of the game that is not Tribal Council, the chances of us getting a final two this season, for the first time since season 28, are very high. They're going to remove a juror, which is annoying, and they shouldn't do that.
Okay, so I'm going to hedge my bet here, and kind of going off of the theme of like quality connection versus quantity. I'm going to say the final three is, I agree with you that Carolyn, I think, is making it. Whether or not she wins, that's I hope, now that I'm thinking about that,
I think Carson makes final three. I don't think he wins. I think he's the 0 vote finalist, and they're setting him up to be the 0 vote. Here's the thing. I think at best Carson's getting second place. Especially with how this merge vote went for him, they're not setting him up to win. They're clearly showing the faults in his game, whether or not it's implied or it's
playing. Yeah, totally.
No,
so I think Carolyn, Heidi, and Franny. And how cool would it be if, we had so many women go back to back in the pre-merge? How cool would it be if the final three are three very different women who played very different games, but the connections that they made all mattered to them greatly.
Yeah. And here's the thing. We also know that from the past 3 seasons that the winner gets an important story beat in the merge.
Okay.
They get something.
That's true.
Yeah. We look back at Erica. She was a major part of the merge, by default, granted, but they really honed in on it. We look at Marianne. She got a little segment where she was they really zoned in on what her strategy was, not where she was in the tribe, but what her strategy was. And then we look at last season where we saw Gabler, and he was a major part of that. And that was his move that really separated him from the other finalists. Yeah. So I think that we need to look at the people who got major story beats and in terms of longevity in the game.
But are we considering this the merge, or
I'm considering
are we talking next? Okay, all right.
I'm considering this the merge, the Mergatory episode. They always get a specific story beat, and the people that got specific story beats were Carson, Carolyn, Matt. Those were the 3. I think they're the biggest chances of getting.
Well, Carolyn's personal content though was not that good. We got a whole scene of Carolyn. Just basically admitting that she struggles with first impressions and talking to people. So my question to you, Nate, is if Carolyn gets there at the end, is she able to, and especially with how many times already we've seen in the season where people have not really respected her agency in the game, did they respect her enough at the end to give her the vote?
I think that's again, she's an orger. She knows what a good speech looks like. Whereas these other players that have just been watching the show, they only see the snippets of what's good, and they only see what's bad from the losers. They don't see what's bad from the winners. And I think that, or what's good from the losers as well. And so Carolyn, I think, just has this leg up where she knows what to say. She has the story of, she's like, yeah, like I struggled with a lot of people at the merge because I like, people look at me and they think that there's something wrong with me. And I struggle with social anxiety. Like that was clearly social anxiety. And I think she can use that. And I think that's a reason why I don't necessarily think I think there's more to it. That's basically it. I don't want to say it's a negative because it is a major story beat that happened in the episode, and it just kind of came out of nowhere where it didn't need to. And they always try to put a fault in the winner's game to make it look like they might not win.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, especially pre-merge.
They have to like overcome adversity, like that type of thing.
Yeah. And I think with Carolyn specifically, it's personal adversity, whereas the other three, and like the other three also had personal adversities. I mean, like Marianne's was her just like talking too much, being overly emotional, and like other players commented on that. Gabler's was physically being destroyed by the game, and that was a major story beat at the end of the season. And then we saw Erica, who felt like she was just not quite in the right place at the right time all the time. So I think that it's just going to come down to how they call back to these story beats. Because if they make it look like it's a positive later, then I think Carolyn wins.
That's interesting. That's a good point. And I hope that you're right.
Yeah.
But I feel like Carolyn, like her personality is so big that like she could be a big red herring for the actual winner.
Very
almost
easy
like,
red herring.
Almost like Ellie last season for
Yeah.
Survivor 43, how big her like edit was, like pre-merge and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope it's not true, but like I'm
I think Josh was the Ellie, honestly.
Okay, yeah.
I think Josh was the Ellie.
Oh God. Well, we haven't talked about Josh, but man, they like really buried him in this episode. Like this dude is just not...
I felt bad for Josh because sometimes like you just can't get past the perception that people have of you. And like I don't think that like it's like, oh, he's a major social threat. I'm like, if you're calling him out as a social threat, he's not a social threat. He's made a misstep somewhere. He's made a mistake. And so, and like to the point where I'm like, if everyone wants him out because they do not trust him, he's not a social threat. The other people are painting him. And that would have sent red flags to me. That would have made me want to keep Josh. But I think at some point it would have just been like a lost cause, because it was like once you're in that situation and people have this perception of you that just doesn't go away within like the first 2 hours of you hitting that beach,
right?
You're not going to get over it, unfortunately, especially in that situation, which is why like they should go back to 39 days because it gives people more time. But
what do we know? Let's see what else. Oh yeah, the first comment we had tonight was so in the preview, Jeff says they won't have a say in the next elimination. What do you think this is all about, Nate?
That was the middle of a speech. I think there's definitely more to it.
Okay. So
I don't want to make presumptions. I think it's like either the person who wins immunity doesn't have a say, because like basically you're safe, you're taken out of the vote, you don't have the power anymore. Which like who cares? Which is actually kind of like an interesting thing, because that makes giving up the immunity necklace slightly more valuable, because that means you get your vote and you have agency. But they really need to put more emphasis on winning the challenge in some way, shape, or form. And then I think the other possibility is that whoever wins the challenge gets to choose a couple people and they don't get to vote either. Or either that, or they're doing the Australian Survivor twist from Brain versus Brawn. That was absolutely terrible. Which I really hope that's not the case. But one thing that I really want them to do, so a bit of a backstory. When I was in high school, we actually played Survivor, and I was on like the production team for it. One of the twists that I came up with for it was we had all idols, end by the merge. We there was only one idol in the game. It got played in the pre-merge, and then at the last tribal it could be played at. And then if you won the challenge, and we made all the challenges like pretty like accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything that was overly physical or overly dominant in terms of like puzzles or anything.
Yeah.
You could give up the necklace after the votes were cast, but before they were read. And like it was an idol, it was a public idol, effectively. And then you had like you either kept yourself safe. And for the first like 4 or 5 rounds, there were so many split votes. It was incredible. So I think
That's cool.
Yeah, once a super majority formed, there was a bit of a pagonging, I remember. And then the guy that won, he had to win out at the end, and he ended up winning with a perfect game, like coincidentally. But they figured out, I was like, oh, probably not.
Henning's calling you out.
Like, system is different. System is different. But like for context, we had to make sure the challenges could be done in like 5 minutes because we were doing them before the school day started. But the regardless, I thought that was an interesting twist. And I hope they kind of consider that, because it's actually like, or at least try that, because that's just something that's so set in stone that they haven't really experimented with. And giving up the necklace has such a bad connotation, so there has to be some sort of positive to it that hasn't been explored yet, and I think that's a way that they could do that. But that's
Gotcha. Yeah. If there's any producers watching, hire Nate. He knows how to make a good twist, better than some twists we've seen lately on Survivor. I'll tell you that.
The best twists are the minimal ones. Like, just let the play. It gives the players the ability to control it. And if it doesn't work because the players figure out how to game it, then you stop it. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, you tried it, okay, it didn't work, then try something else. So
all right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and update our draft here. All right. So, Josh, I uploaded this same screenshot last week, right before Jeff said there was no tribal council, so I didn't even have to do any extra work. So Josh is gone now. Beth's third person out of the draft. So now that we are in the merge proper, what do you think of these 3 teams?
I think each of you has a finalist. I don't see how any of you is gonna run away with more than one. Beth is screwed, I think, in terms of points, but I think she has the best chance of having the winner on her draft with Carolyn. I think Allison's best pick right now is honestly Matt. He is the most positive at it outside of like the couples thing. And then Tyler, I think your best chance is probably Carson, unfortunately. And I know I've been shitting on him all night, but like, I think
you think Carson has a better chance to win than Franny?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm like on the Franny train. I don't know why. I just
I like Franny as a player. I don't think she's been given a big enough, positive enough edit. Whereas Matt has been more obvious with his gameplay in terms of like what he wants to happen. I mean, like tonight he got like, whether or not it was like, he got implied credit, I would say, where what he wanted to happen did happen for his personal game. Whereas we don't really know what Franny wants for her personal game, other than the fact that she does not want to be seen as a close couple with Matt. And they're doing continuously a bad job of hiding that. So
I'm like can we just like stop trying to hide it? You know what I mean? Like you're spending so much time and energy worrying about like the optics of it, when you could be spending that time and energy like bringing somebody else into this group that you have. You know
what they need to do is instead of trying to make they're going about it the wrong way. They need to make the target as big as humanly possible. Because the bigger they make it, the better chance they have of at least one of them making like Final Four. And both of them like staying longer. Like the bigger you make your like there are two dichotomies here. You either try to minimize your target as much as possible, which they cannot do. They're not in a position where they can do that. Or they just blow it up out of oblivion, which I think the best example of that is Australian Survivor Heroes versus Villains with the Spice Girls. They blew their target up like crazy.
Yeah,
and
picking each other for rewards and stuff too.
And they were not targeted at all past a certain point, because no one dared to do it except themselves.
Yeah.
So the only people that turned on the Spice Girls were the Spice Girls. So that's so I think the correct move is them to blow it up, and it's a risk, obviously, but like it is the best risk for them right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. Speaking of, they did like a 5-hour, 45-minute like deep dive with George on RHAP. I'm like, I have like 30 minutes left of it, but damn, if you have not listened to it, it is such a good, thorough recap of how the season probably realistically went, like, because it was George's season from start to finish. So I trust I trust his mind for the game to be able to tell that story in a way that is not
just the George show
fluffed. Right, exactly. So if you enjoyed the season as much as I did, I know we have some fans that like check
please
it out.
Send me that link.
I will. It is very, very good. Yes,
I do want to bring up one point though, because I saw
go ahead. You're good.
Hey, Survivor fans, do not direct your hate about people knowing what the puzzle is at Carson. He took advantage of a broken system to his benefit. So that is the correct and logical thing to do. Direct your anger at Survivor production, because they should not be just recycling the same 10 puzzles every single episode. So
I agree. And also, like, I know it's been a big conversation of like on Twitter anyway about like Carson's privilege, like allowing him to be good at puzzles because he is the 3D printer.
Buy the puzzle for 20 bucks on Etsy.
Right, or 3D printers are not that expensive, so and like it's not
even then
big,
you can pay someone who has a 3D printer $20 to make you that puzzle. Like Jesus, like no, like like he spent like $300 to buy it. Yes, like personally for me, I would not drop $200 on a 3D printer and everything else that you need to buy. However, there are means to buy that puzzle and like put away like some coins like here and there and save up for it.
Yeah,
and it is very easy to do it. It is.
Listen, if that is the way that you get to the end in Survivor and win, that's the best $300 you could ever spend in your life.
Exactly. Hell, that's the best $20 on Etsy you could probably spend. Like,
yes,
it's just.
But no, I totally agree, Nate. Like, it's that is a fault or a exploitation that like production in any game, not just Survivor US, but like any of these games, like production is a player in the game that you need to outwit, outplay, outlast, and you will be rewarded for it. And Carson is like, as soon as I saw him and Matt on the puzzle together, I was like, damn, they are gonna like fly through this.
Like Carson was just like picking up the piece and putting it on the tree. He wasn't even like testing half the time. He was like, okay, this goes here. Okay, this goes here, because he knew where it was going to go. And like that is one of the most basic puzzles. Like I don't even know. Like the thing about that puzzle specifically is that you don't even need to buy a 3D printer to print it out and make the damn puzzle. You can actually just memorize where the pieces go from screenshots. Like because
screenshot it, print it out on like a piece of paper, and then like cut it up.
Yeah, like do what you got to do on top of that. But like, and even then, you don't even have to do that, because the way that they order those like specific like leaves on the trees is that they alternate colors. Like I think there was only one time where they didn't do that, and apparently it took like 3 times longer than normal to solve the puzzle. So they just stopped doing it, and we're like, we're just gonna make it alternated again. But like the first time that popped up, I think was season 24. One World, I think that's what it was. It was the second one, and like ever since then, I'm like, I noticed it. I was like, oh yeah, it just alternates. Once you figure that out, you're done. Like, and I've personally solved the fire puzzle that people have like commented about, and like Carson has shown, and like that puzzle is also just not difficult to know. Like, yes, it helps if you've printed it out, but like once you've seen it done, it's not hard to understand how it works. Like these puzzles aren't difficult. I mean, the same thing applies to a lot of puzzles. Once you know how to do it, it's solved. Like that's just how it is. They just need to create new puzzles. Simple as that.
I agree. And like I thought like this challenge overall, I just thought was very cool. That's one thing I think Survivor US is doing like so fantastically is just like the production of the challenges and stuff.
I
Like
agree.
like besides like the puzzles that they reuse, like they could
Yeah.
not
They're
do that.
spending their money on everything else except the puzzles.
Yeah. Gotta cut the budget somewhere, of course. But
Yeah.
um,
I honestly wouldn't mind if they took out a couple more puzzles because like they have the opposite problem that Australian Survivor does, where Australian Survivor doesn't have enough puzzles, whereas US Survivor has too many. So
I think that's just a difference in culture in terms of
yeah.
like what like we as Americans value versus like those Aussies, like they are
Yeah.
built different. Like they are like fucking like physical units, like every single
Yes,
one.
but, like they also have more they'll use a puzzle in the middle of a challenge rather than the end of the challenge. Like stop, like
Yeah,
do that. Even if they did
that's
that,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
if they did that instead, it would have been a lot more interesting. And like they need to seal the puzzle that was in Brain versus Brawn, where they had to like sneak the ring through the rope that George solved. Like that was a great puzzle, and like no one's gonna be able to look at that and be like, "Yeah, I understand how that works." No, like you
Right.
that's you got to practice that one. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
And if they do it once, it doesn't seem like one that it's terribly hard to build. I mean, it's like a hula hoop and 2 boxes and a rope. Like
Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they need to be more creative instead of like trying to create these humongous ass set pieces that look amazing, but like at the same time, like you've seen it before. It's just bigger.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I think that does it for us. Short and sweet episode and recap. I told Nate I have a work call at 10:30, so I got to go get prepped for that. But Nate, thank you again for joining me and nerding out with me. I always appreciate hashing out the strategy, and I love the edit talk I can have with you because Allison and Beth are not about that life. So I feel like I can get all my like edgic thoughts out while
It's not, like edgic doesn't work anymore. It's story beats now.
I know
Yeah.
it's so different, and it's so hard to like. Okay, so like once you explore the world of edgic, that is toothpaste that you can never put back in the tube. Like it's so impossible to watch Survivor the same way again. And so I totally agree that like modern Survivor is edited differently, and I feel like I'm tripping up with like editing beats that would so previously be so clear in terms of like
they're editing beats for the number of confessionals they got, and with the exception of a handful of seasons, and those seasons pissed people off at the time of airing, and so now they've changed it up to where again quality versus quantity. It's not it doesn't matter how many you got to get the right ones. And I've been able to pick that up thankfully because I've actually edited the show on YouTube. I'm not going to post about it because I'm not doing it anymore. But like, it doesn't matter how many confessionals they get or how many like conversations they get. It matters what those conversations are about.
Well, it's funny you say that because like in that George deep dive for Australian Survivor, I think Shannon says that like George holds like the all-time record for like most amount of like confessional time in a season or something like that, which like makes sense. But Liz actually had like far less than even Maddie or Jerry. But she was saying like exactly what you're saying, Nate, that like it's not the quantity that matters, it's the quality. God, this theme is like overarching like everything in the Survivor universe right now.
So pay attention to the people that they're showing to be important this time. Like, because before they didn't care about who was important, they cared about who was entertaining. That has changed. They understand that people want to see the actual strategy and the thoughts behind it, so they're paying attention more to what actually people think and how they perceive the game rather than like, oh, they're just hilarious or they're exciting to watch. So
right. All right. Well, everybody have a good rest of your night. Allison will be back on Monday to talk all things Yellow Jackets season 2. And then next week we'll be back for the merge proper. So everybody have a good rest of your night. Take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.